Hey everybody, this is Positive Benzo Withdrawal, and I decided to make a video today because it's been a while and I want to just check in. So I'm not done with my taper, I'm still tapering, but I'm on a very small, tiny little, it's like granular, not quite granular, but it's pretty small, 0.046 of clonazepam. And I came down off of 1 milligram over 9 months so far. I did a pretty quick taper up until I kind of hit a massive wall and I started slowing way down. And I have to say over the last few weeks, I've been mainly symptom free. I do have some burning sensations here and there, but they kind of come in like zaps and burn and then go away quickly. Come quickly, go quickly. And the other one I have is like slight derealization, but not very often. So I wanted to make this video to talk a bit today about the 10 things I do that really make a massive difference in my withdrawal. And I have to tell you that I've had as bad as anybody else. Actually, I can't say that. I don't know what other people have had, but I've had pretty awful symptoms, and I've used these tools throughout the whole time that I've been tapering and withdrawing, and I have managed to have, I think, a pretty, I want to say easy time, but I have had a lot of windows and have been able to ride the waves fairly easier maybe than some people that I've seen out there. And again, I can't judge anybody. I'm not in anybody else's shoes, but this is what's worked for me. So I'm going to start my list. So first thing I would say is exercise. And this is something that I've seen in a lot of success stories that I've read and heard from people, is like a really consistent exercise routine. So, you know, I have been a dancer for years and did yoga prior to that and hiked and all kinds of like really active lifestyle. During my taper and with major withdrawal, the only thing I could do, you know, especially in the very beginning, was just walk around the block or just walk for 10 minutes. And I'm a big fan of YouTube and putting on like a TED Talks or motivational speaking and just making like a couple of rounds around the block. And every time I do that, I would feel better. And I noticed that symptoms would sort of pass as I was exercising. So I kept it up until I eventually got to doing miles, like walking miles and miles, and listening to the TED Talks, and I'd be having waves and fear and paranoia, but there's something about the motion of walking and listening to something positive, until finally a couple weeks ago I started being able to take dance classes again. And I noticed once I started to be able to do like more rigorous cardio that my serotonin, because I know that exercise produces serotonin, and serotonin is our happy hormone, I started to feel like, whoo, like lighter and happier and full of energy. So I have to say that stuck with me this whole entire time is exercise. I cannot emphasize that enough. I think exercise is working on all these other parts of our bodies. You know, our GABA has been downregulated, but that doesn't mean there's not other hormones that we can't affect by getting out and doing exercise. If you're homebound and all you can do is some yoga stretches, I think that's fine. I think that just moving your body, like stretching, deep breathing, yoga, a little bit of movement around the house if you can. I think just little increments and then build up over time. The second thing is a really clean diet. And this was not something that I had planned on doing. This is because I have really bad food sensitivities and my diet needed to get cleaned up. So I could no longer tolerate a lot of the foods I was eating. And it was already really healthy, but this involved getting rid of gluten, sugar, dairy. For a while I didn't do grains, but that wasn't really that great for me. And just like I would eat only the things that didn't trigger symptoms, and I would eat them over and over and over again. And in some ways I think that was actually really beneficial because it allowed my body to just totally cleanse out of any other toxins that might have been there that had been, you know, I needed to do a cleanse for a long time. So a really clean diet, lots of water, grass-fed meats, all organic, 100% organic, cooking a lot of my own food, eating only food from like Whole Foods. It was a little expensive. It's been expensive, but it's been totally worth it. The third thing on my list is positive thinking. And I think this has been a total lifesaver for me. I've always been a positive person, but I've allowed my mind to kind of take me down some dark paths. I've been depressed, I've had other issues, and during this withdrawal, I was no longer able to entertain even one negative thought because that would produce a symptom. And I got to really be clear about my thinking and my body's reactions and how they would go back and forth. So for the sake of staying relatively above the symptoms or reducing symptoms, I've had to develop this really big practice of positive thinking. And I use all kinds of tools for that: metaphysics, affirmations, science of mind, affirmations posted all around my place. Even on my gram scale on the box, I have like post-it notes with affirmations like "easy does it, but do it," "this too shall pass." I've written gratitude lists, and I really also surround myself with people who are also doing like positive thinking, and just eliminated any kind of negativity that meant like not watching the news and anything negative. I think that this has been my biggest, like the biggest, most radical change that I've made through this process, and has helped me so much. Distraction. So that's my fourth thing on the list. So distraction, any kind of healthy distraction. I learned to knit, and I knit and knit and knit. Anytime I would get any kind of a symptom, like especially from eating something or just like a wave coming through, I grab my knitting and I just start knitting. And there's something about the distraction of that would just allow me, it didn't necessarily make it go away, but I stayed sane. My mind wasn't racing and running around and what if, and it avoided me to get into catastrophic thinking. So I would suggest, if you can pick up a knitting needle or two, or crochet, or do something else with your hands. People have suggested gardening, but I think it's really about getting your body active in some way to get out of your head. I also have done adult coloring books as a distraction, TED Talks, or anything on, really get geeky and look up things like neuroplasticity and neurogenesis. Like, that's a great distraction. Getting out into nature has been a great distraction. But really, I think if we get too far into our thinking about our issues and our symptoms, that's not serving well, because it's too much cortisol and stress hormones. So distracting, getting into, relaxation. I think knitting produces like dopamine. I mean, again, there's more hormones that we want to sort of manipulate during this process that can really help us. So then the fifth thing I would say is coconut water. So I discovered the beneficial powers of coconut water and have pretty much drank it almost every single day in the last 9 months. And I can tell when I'm drinking it how hydrated I feel, and actually really helps my symptoms a lot. I don't know if this would work for you, and I don't know if other people have talked about it, but it's been really, really good for me. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The sixth thing is work. I have stayed employed, I'm self-employed, but I have kept myself employed throughout this whole time, except for I took 2 months off, and when I was really in acute, in the very, very beginning, when I kind of didn't even know what was going on with me. I took a couple months off, which was really good, and I definitely think that's always appropriate if you need to do that. No shame in taking disability or whatever you need to. Once I got kind of back on my feet, though, I've stayed working, and I've literally had symptoms coinciding with working, and it's been challenging to navigate that. And at the same time, work is a distraction, so work would get me out of my like perpetual thinking, oh, poor me, poor me, poor me. And if you're able to work, if you can't work, obviously don't. If you're able to work and you can even just work a couple hours a day, I think it's a really healthy distraction, especially if you like what you do, which I really love my work. So I'm sort of blessed in that way. The next thing would be distress tolerance. And I've talked about this before, but I have part of a DBT, dialectic behavioral therapy group, that I do once a week, and that teaches a lot of distress tolerance. Those skills have been really powerful for me, not just getting through withdrawal, but also just managing some of the reasons why I got into benzos to begin with, which was my complex PTSD. And I highly suggest, if you can, learn some distress tolerance through mindfulness meditation, grounding, anything that gets you out of your head and kind of into your body in a way that's, that feels really comforting to you. So like a fluffy blanket, a stuffed animal. The knitting has been really grounding for me. These are all distress tolerance tools, and you can look that kind of stuff up online. Like, what are some distress tolerance tools? I think that is super important because in benzo withdrawal, we are under a lot of distress, and we have to learn how to tolerate them because there's no escape. And there's just a ton of skills that you can learn. What's next? So connecting to community, that has been so important for me. And I guess I'm lucky in some regards that I'm already sort of extroverted and I'm connected to a lot of people. And I just kind of dove deep into all of those connections. So I'm in 12-step recovery, going to meetings, sitting in meetings, knitting and feeling awful, but at least being in a community or a room full of people who are really loving and supportive, who've also been through hard times, has been really good. Joining online communities, being super careful and discerning about what communities I've joined online. Some of the benzo community forums I had to actually disconnect from because they weren't really serving me, and my whole positive thinking would get kind of shaken up, and in withdrawal, feeling like any fear or paranoia would get heightened if I read anything that was on the negative side. So I had to be really mindful, just like cleaning up my diet, that I was really cleaning up my communities, staying super connected to positive communities, friends, talking on the phone to people, like leaning on my partner, leaning on my friends as much as possible has been a total lifesaver for me, and I highly recommend that. I know some people are isolated, and I think that's, in our kind of internet age, it's less of an issue if you can get online on Facebook or on Benzo Buddies and connect with other people, even if you're sort of isolated from other people because you're homebound, or even just reaching out. Sometimes it can be very hard to reach out to family or friends or other people because we're really independent people. But when we're sick and we're not well, I think that is the one exception to the rule, is just reach out. Like, don't worry about your ego. If you need help, you need help. That's what I've found to really help me. So let's see, no stress. I think this is number 9 now. No stress. And I haven't been able to avoid all stress. Of course, I'm human. I live in the world. I'm in a relationship, and that can be stressful. However, there was a time in my relationship where if anything came up that brought my cortisol levels up, and immediately I could feel myself going into a wave, I would just cut it off. Like, nope, I can't do this right now. And my partner was good at working with me around that. We had an understanding, and it didn't always work. It especially was hard during a really bad wave where I'm super irritated. So, it's not a foolproof plan, but for the most part, I was able to eliminate 90% of the stress in my life. And I really actively did that. I think that if you can get out of any stressful situations that you're in right now, again, leaning on community, leaning on support if you have stress in your life, is going to make the waves and the cortisol spikes way less. And if you haven't already figured it out, we are totally interconnected, and our waves and stress are very connected. Anything in the body that's going to activate it at all, and that's why I gave up sugar and caffeine. I had to give up stress. I just had to do it, Once we're fully healed, hey man, give me some stress, that's cool. But for now, no, absolutely not. And then the last thing, number 10, is the repetitive knowledge over and over again that this too shall pass. And it doesn't feel like it. I thought this was terminal. I thought I was going to be like this forever. I never thought I'd get my brain back or my body back. And just reminding myself daily, you know what? This is withdrawal. Like, I've actually had withdrawal from another substance years and years and years ago. And it was really, really hard, but it passed. It passed. And then I never thought about it ever again. And I always wonder, like, whatever happened to the people who used to be in hardcore withdrawal and they're gone? Like, you don't hear anything about them anymore, like all the success stories, because they're healed and they're living their lives. So knowing and just telling yourself like a mantra every single day, this too shall pass, this too shall pass, this is temporary. And I know I have a little bit longer to go. I'm not fully done yet, and I don't know what's on the other end. Like, when I finally stop it for good, I don't know what's going to happen, but what I do know is that I have these tools and I will continue to use them, steps 1 through 10, over and over and over again. So I have a lot more to say on the subject, but I wanted to, at least, since I have a moment of clarity, just kind of get that out there. If you have anything to add or you have any questions, please remark on the videos, like the video, share the video. Again, this is all meant to bring like a positive spin to benzo withdrawal, because there's a lot of negativity, of course with good reason, because it's very hard, but I wanted to give people an opportunity to have something positive. So hopefully this has helped you today, and be good, be well, stay safe, and know that this too shall pass. All right, see y'all later.